Hello, BookTube. Another mail haul? Anybody? I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that last one was such a train wreck that you maybe not want another one, but this time we're going to control ourselves from beginning to end. And once again, as I'm going to mention ad nauseum in the month of March, I am watching out for mammoths. Because March is the March of the Mammoths. It's a BookTube event. It just started this year. Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse and Lukash have started an event without me. Why they didn't ask me to join in the hosting, I have no idea. Who's read more mammoths than I have? Who is the only booktuber who's actually seen a mammoth? But no, they don't like me because I smell. But anyway, their event is March of the Mammoths, and it is designed to celebrate books that are 800 pages or more. Massive books. Bigger even than the tomes that are celebrated in Tome Topple. So I'm on the lookout for them. I already have a bunch that I want to read in March, but I'm always willing to add more. So let's go through here. We've got a few packages here. One of them is fairly heavy. It'll either be many books, or it will be something approaching a tome, a mammoth. So let's see what this first one is. What have we got here? Oh, fantastic. Okay, this is not a mammoth, but oh, you want that baby. Somebody was calmly sleeping behind me on the bed and then realized there's mail. This is not a mammoth, but I can't wait to read it. This is by Clay Reason, and it is The Crowded Hour. Theodore Roosevelt, The Rough Riders, and the Dawn of the American Century. Look at that cover. Isn't that awesome? I don't know if you can make it out in this crappy lighting. But I'd rather take crappy lighting over no lighting at all. It's going to be blizzarding tomorrow. But this is the signature showboat military event that made Theodore Roosevelt as a public persona. Let's see here. Though they lasted only 6 months, Theodore Roosevelt's Rough Riders is perhaps the most famous regiment in American history. Cowboys and athletes hardened by life on the open range or by competitive sports, the Rough Riders did not make for traditional soldiers. And in this book is the fascinating story of this regiment, led by Colonel Leonard Wood and young Teddy Roosevelt in the Spanish-American War. The American military had been little respected by foreign powers until the often disparaged but highly motivated Rough Riders decisively beat the Spanish, ushering in a new era of American expansionism. Using diaries, letters, and memoirs, The Crowded Hour explores the motivations behind this rush to war and the day-by-day narrative of the men who joined up. And I've read every Theodore Roosevelt biography that's ever been written, so I've read a lot about the Rough Riders, but I don't know that I've ever read a book specifically devoted to them. And it's a terrific story. It's aggravating, and I'm hoping this author doesn't just fall for it hook, line, and sinker. But it has a certain kind of romantic allure anyway, even though you know that allure is mostly sham. And the follow-up story, I'm hoping, I don't know anything about this book, but I'm hoping that the last chapter is the follow-up story. Because Roosevelt stayed in affectionate, close, and idiosyncratic contact with as many Rough Riders as he could for the rest of his life. Often, he would go to a massive event to give a speech. And when it was done, he always worked the crowd. He would just go into the throng. And often, when that happened, or when there was a huge crowd, thousands of people to see him off on some journey or other, he would often call out. He would go to the end of the stage and call out, "Are there any Rough Riders here?" Just so that he could greet them personally, so he could go and shake their hands or reach out and touch their fingers. Boy, this is fantastic. Okay, and this has blurbs from John Meacham, Patricia O'Toole, Douglas Brinkley, Hampton Sides. So it's going to get a good launch, and this comes out in early June. Fantastic. I'm all for it. This will probably get reviewed everywhere. Theodore Roosevelt books tend to. All right, so that's a fine start. That's just a fine start. Let's see what we have next here. Oh, no. Okay. All right, this is, I think this is a finished copy. I believe this is a finished copy in paperback. Yeah, this is a paperback original. Boy, it's lovely. I've already read this. I read the advanced copy that I got, but I'm happy to have the finished copy. The finished copy is lovely. We saw this already on this channel. I did not know that this was going to be issued as a paperback original. This is by Seth Freed, and it is The Municipalists. Look at that. You can't tell, but the cover is embossed. All of the loopy details are bumped off the cover. Let's see. And this is his caffeinated, wildly imaginative, exhilarating debut novel. which stars an unlikely pair as lonely urban planners, one human, one AI. Do you remember this? It was months ago. You might not remember this. And plus, a whole bunch of you are new and probably are wondering what you signed up for here. Who set off on an epic adventure to save Metropolis, the gleaming city of tomorrow, from an impending terrorist attack. A contributor to the New Yorker's Shouts and Murmurs column, two-time Pushcart winner and author of the celebrated short story collection The Great Frustration, Freed delivers a laugh-out-loud tour de force and a unique vision of a not-so-distant America, one that sharply explores subcultures and niche obsessions, our relationship to the cities around us, and the technologies guiding us into the future. And this comes out it's a March release. It comes out in the third week of March. And I read it, and I liked it. It's plenty inventive. It promises to be uproarious and laugh out loud funny, and it was not uproarious, and I did not laugh out loud. But it was smart enough, certainly. I know it's a trite thing to say in circumstances like this, but I very much want to read more from this author. Maybe I'll give this a second try and see if maybe there were. Maybe I had a caraway seed stuck in my tooth or something when I was reading it. Maybe I'll give it a second try. It's a little thing, and it's a paperback release from March, which I didn't know. So maybe I'll give it another try and see if maybe there's more to it than that. And if there is, dramatically so, I'll report back. Let's see what's next here. Yes, speed? No? Seems a little heavier. Oh no. Is this what I think it is? Yes. Okay. Wow. Okay, so my bookish instincts called this one a mile off. I called this over a year ago. That we would see a big book on this subject, and here it is. Wow. Okay, this is by Anthony McCann. It comes out in July, and it's called Shadowlands, Fear and Freedom at the Oregon Standoff. This is a story. Well, here, let me read it to you. I knew that this was going to generate books, because there were reporters all over the place when this was happening. In 2016, a group of armed, divinely inspired right-wing protesters led by Eamon Bundy occupied the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in the high desert of eastern Oregon. Encamped in the Shadowlands of the Republic, insisting that the federal government had no right to own public land, the occupiers were seen by a divided country as either dangerous extremists dressed up as cowboys or as heroes insisting on restoring the rule of Constitution. From the occupation's beginnings, occupation with a capital O, to trials of the occupiers in federal court in downtown Portland and their tumultuous aftermaths, this book is the resonant, multifaceted story of one of the most dramatic flashpoints in the year that gave us Donald Trump. And many commentators came at this from, as you can tell from that pub sheet, they came at this from all kinds of angles about what to think about the Bundy family, what to think about this standoff, what to think about the fact that these guys were claiming to own federal land. But the one comment that everyone made in unison was that if these guys had been black, they'd all be dead. They would have been shot by police. The place would have been stormed with assault vehicles, and there would have been nothing but dead bodies. And that I do believe. But do we have more here? Yes, sharing the expansive stage with the occupiers are a host of others. Native American tribal leaders, public land ranchers, militia members, environmentalists, federal defense agents, and Black Lives Matter activists, each contending in their different ways with the meaning of the American promise of liberty. Oh boy. Oh, I'm eager to read this. All right, so who is Andrew McCann when he's at home? He's the author of a poetry collection. What on earth? What are you doing in the Badlands of Oregon if you've written a poetry collection? He currently teaches creative writing at the California Institute of the Arts and in the low residency MFA program at the University of California, Riverside. What on earth drew him to this subject? I'll have to see if maybe he's interviewed somewhere. And he lives currently in the Mojave Desert. I have lived briefly in the Mojave Desert. I don't know why anyone would do that voluntarily, but there you go. Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, boy, talk about getting reviewed everywhere. Oh, boy. I hope that Bloomsbury is prepared, because this is going to get tons of coverage. I can't hear myself think. I can't tell her no. She's enjoying herself so much. We'll just I'll just shout. I'm used to yelling at you anyway. So, let's move on. Let's move on to this next one. What is this? Oh, fantastic. Okay, I think we saw this already on this channel, but I'm happy to have another copy. This is a May release. I have already read it. It's tremendously impressive. It's as good as I was hoping it would be. And it's a biography of Admiral Leahy, who was an incredibly powerful figure in American World War II era history that most people don't know and can't identify. This is by Phillips Payson O'Brien, and it is the second most powerful man in the world. I wish that it weren't called that. Of course, that is an ungainly title and also an untrue title. At the time that Admiral Leahy was serving as an alternate brain for President Roosevelt and as a whip and a power manager all over the American government, Joseph Stalin was also in charge of Russia. So, anyway, we might as well talk about this again, since I think it's been a while since I read it. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, President Franklin Roosevelt needed a single person at his side whom he could trust implicitly. With multiple advisors to choose from, he summoned Admiral William Leahy to the White House and made him the first presidential chief of staff, although it was a position far more powerful than the one today. Soon, Leahy was the highest-ranked officer in American history to that point, with enormous influence in how the Anglo-American alliance fought the war on two fronts. And this is his story, and it's tremendously well done. This comes out, when did I say? May. It's a little bit unfortunate. The timing is a little bit unfortunate. There's not much you can do about it. I have mentioned on this channel before that often book section editors are harried, overworked, and pressed for space. That is often the case. So they tend to have a sweet spot for lumping books together. They go for anniversaries. They go for lumping books together. Anything that can cover the most titles in the ground that they have. And I want to say, unfortunately, at the same time that this book is coming out, there is a big new biography of FDR during World War II. And I'd be willing to bet that a large section of the book's coverage that this book gets will be divided with that book. They'll be lumped together. It's just natural. Every book editor in the country is going to see those two books on the forthcoming May shelf and grab them together. And also, I mean, to be fair, it's not just them. It's also that they're going to have in their Rolodex, or whatever people use for Rolodexes now, they're going to have a list of reviewers. The New York Times does. The New York Review of Books does. The London Review of Books does. Everybody does. They're going to have a list of reviewers, and they're going to have, I've got a reviewer who does World War II era biographies, who does World War II era books. I'll just send both of these to that reviewer. I don't think it's the reason I say it's unfortunate is because this book is good enough to stand on its own. It's good enough to deserve its own review. I will certainly give it its own review. Unless a book section editor commissions me to review the two of them together. Oh, isn't that shameful? Then we come to this last one, and it's quite heavy. It could be a mammoth. This last one could be a mammoth. It's very heavy. So let's see. Let's see what we have here. Oh, it is. Oh my. Oh, what is this? 1,300 pages. That counts as a mammoth. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Oh, I can't wait. I don't have a pub sheet for this thing, but that's okay. This is one of the biggest books that's coming out in 2019, and it's squarely in my wheelhouse. I can't wait to get to it. It is a novel. It's an enormous novel by Edoardo Albinati, and it's translated from the Italian by Anthony Sugar, who's done lots of high-profile translations from the Italian. And it's called The Catholic School. Oof! All right, so I got a mammoth. It's not counting from March. This is an August release. Daunting. Intimidating. But it's possible that some aspects of this will annoy me. I think this is probably the largest example of autofiction since Karl Ove Knausgaard put down his boring pen. Autofiction for autofiction, as we mentioned on this channel before, is when a writer simply writes their own story into their fiction without any alteration whatsoever, and just leaves it there. And it's a fad. It's a current trend. It's been happening for the last few years. In fact, Karl Ove Knausgaard sort of blazed the trail for writers to see that it could be that you could trick critics into praising it critically. And I don't know if this will be that or entirely that. Well, let me read you a bit of this thing. You see, because right away the tagline in the pub sheet material is that it's a semi-autobiographical novel. And that isn't true. From what I know, the details are not semi-autobiographical. They are explicitly identifiable with the author and the author's home streets and the author's family and friends. But let's see here. Edoardo Albanati's The Catholic School, the winner of Italy's most prestigious award, the Strega Prize, is a powerful investigation of the heart and soul of contemporary Italy. It revolves around the 1975 Cicero massacre, which I'm going to need to learn a lot about before I really weigh in on this book. 3 well-off young men, former students at Rome's prestigious all-boy Catholic high school San Leone Magno, brutally tortured, raped, and murdered 2 young women in 1975. The event, which came to be known as the Cicero Massacre, shocked and captivated the country, exposing the violence and dark underbelly of the upper middle class at a moment when the traditional structures of family and religion seemed to be under threat. In this environment, the halls of San Leone Magno in late 1960s and 70s, that it was here that Edoardo Albanati takes as his subject. His experience at the school, reflections on his adolescence, and thoughts on the forces that produced contemporary Italy are painstaking and thoughtfully rendered, producing a remarkable blend of memoir, coming-of-age novel, and true crime story. And as you have heard me say many times when autofiction comes up on this channel, you cannot blend those things. You cannot blend those things. They take different skills, and they end up with different excellences. The only way that you can try and blend them is the Karl Ove Knausgaard school of mixing them all together and then using one to hide behind if someone attacks the other. This is a poor novel. Well, it all happened this way. Well, this is a poor memoir. Well, it's mostly novelistic. That just doesn't fly. But you never know. This could, at any time, I could encounter an example of that trend which I have not liked. At any time, I could encounter an example that I love. With Edouard Louis, it took just a mental feat of mental jujitsu. I just decided, with The End of Violence, I just decided, these are just memoirs. I just decided to think that way. I did the same thing with most of Knausgaard and with with Edouard Bernet. I just said, I don't care that his publisher is marketing these things as novels. Nothing in this book, not one small, tiny detail, is a product of the author's imagination. All of it happened. In fact, in the second book that was translated into English, since all of it was in the court records, you can verify that it all happened. So I'm just going to think of these as memoirs. And once I did that, the second book took on a lot more charm for me. I liked it a lot more once I made that decision. I don't know. I may have to do that. It'd be hard to sustain a mental decision like that for a book this big. But anyway, let's see here. He is a novelist, journalist, and screenwriter who lives in Rome. And his novel, Svenimenti, won the 2004 Viareggio Literary Award. Wow, he won a literary award in over 10 years. Huh. And the translator, as I mentioned, is Anthony Sugar. So, thankfully, since this is such an enormous thing, I don't think I'm going to have to go beating the bushes for an Italian version of this book. Anthony Sugar is a translator who has usually pleased me by getting out of the way. The only way that translators do. The way to please me is to get out of the way. The way to please me if you're a translator is to make me think you're not in the room. If I start to feel like you're massaging what you're translating, then I want you gone. Especially if it's a language that I can read. Boy, oh boy, though. Fantastic. Okay, so this comes out in August. I will probably be working on this all summer. And I wonder what kind of publication, what kind of coverage it will get. Since I'm a reviewer, I naturally wonder that kind of thing. This is daunting for most reviewers, who are especially semi-professional or professional reviewers who constantly have a stream of books coming their way. This represents putting everything else, for most readers, this represents putting everything else aside for a long time. And most professional or semi-professional working reviewers can't do that. So I wonder what kind of coverage it will get. It seems obviously important. And it is a mammoth. It's just going to come too late for March. All right, so there you go. That was a pretty good mail haul. So we have the Catholic school, a massive and apparently critically praised. Those of you in Italy, was this critically praised? It won the Strega Award. That's a big deal. But did people read it? So a massive novel, and also a massive work of autofiction, it sounds like. We shall see. Then The Second Most Powerful Man in the World, about Admiral Leahy, a revelatory biography, just groundbreaking, and obviously the best biography he'll ever get. I don't imagine anyone writing another biography of him. Then Shadowlands, about the Oregon standoff. A bunch of overweight middle-aged cowboys with guns, lots and lots of guns, and American flags draped over the backs of their horses, standing off against federal forces. And there was bloodshed, and there was all sorts of heightened tension. And this is the big book on that subject that I predicted. I'm so smart. Then The Crowded Hour, the story of Theodore Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. You can't go wrong. Well, you can. I'll see if the author does. But it's an inherently dramatic subject. So, I'm going to read it with devotion anyway, because it's about the progressive era is my favorite era in American history, aside from the American Revolution. So I'll eat it up anyway. But and then lastly, the Municipalists, in a finished trade paperback, a very lovely finished trade paperback. And I will read it again. I will read it again and see if maybe I just was being unfairly impatient the first time. I'll do that this week. And the sea pyramid unintentionally is decreasing in size as it goes up. So the Egyptians would actually approve of this Steve pyramid. But anyway, so there you go. That is another mail haul. I don't think there'll be any more mail today, and God knows what the mail will be like tomorrow, because it's going to be blizzarding snow all day tomorrow. It's March. The next month on the calendar is April. I want winter to be over. Nobody seems to care what I want. Anyway, I will wrap this up. But I will be back. Thank you, Book 2.